Oh, God, yeah. I was in a marvelous room with another fellow who who said to there was a very cold-looking nurse, very stern.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's exactly how it started. Walter Matthau sat in a small studio chair, eyes sharp, voice low. The questions rolled in, casual at first. Then, out of nowhere, something shifted. Matthau stiffened, tore off his microphone, and walked out. For 30 years, nobody talked about this interview. Why did Hollywood's grumpiest genius refuse to play along? To answer that, you need to understand his life, the chaos, the scars, and the moments that made him one of the most unpredictable legends in show business. Walter Matthau was born on October 1, 1920, on New York's Lower East Side. Back then, it wasn't the trendy, hipster neighborhood people know today, was a battlefield of poverty. His mother, Rose, had escaped Lithuania. His father, Milton, drifted in from Kiev. They worked whatever odd jobs they could find, just to stay alive. When Walter was 3, his father disappeared, just gone. He didn't even learn the man was dead until he was 15, when a letter arrived from Bellevue Hospital. Rose was left alone, sewing underwear in sweatshops, while raising Walter and his brother, Henry. Their homes were freezing tenements with no heat, no hot water, sometimes not even private toilets. Landlords kicked them out when rent was late, which was often. Walter remembered hiding in a shared bathroom, not to escape people, but to escape life, reading Shakespeare in the dark corners just to forget the hunger. He would later call those years a dreadful, horrible, stinking nightmare. But that nightmare forged a survivor. By 6, Walter wasn't playing with toys, he was hustling. He ran a rooftop card game called Bankers Brokers and sold snacks at the packed Yiddish theaters. He learned how to read people, how to spot weakness, how to make money out of thin air. At 11, he got his first acting gig in a play called The Dishwasher. 50 cents a show, big money for a kid. But even then, Matthau didn't quit his side hustle. He still sold candy and drinks during intermissions, turning every stage into both a job and a classroom. This wasn't acting school. This was survival school. When the Great Depression hit harder, Walter took whatever jobs came his way. The W sent him to Montana as a forestry worker, then back to New York as a boxing coach for policemen. The street kid was suddenly training cops how to fight. Then came World War II. Matthau enlisted in the Army Air Forces in 1942. He became a radio man gunner on B-24 bombers with the 453rd Bombardment Group. Imagine at 20 years old, flying over Nazi Germany, manning machine guns, sending radio codes while flak tore through the sky. He survived raids over Berlin. He survived D-Day support missions. And in his unit, another Hollywood star, James Stewart, serving as operations officer. Matthau walked away with 6 battle stars and the kind of haunted eyes only war could carve into a man. He returned alive, but not untouched. Back in New York, the GI Bill gave him a second chance. He studied acting under Erwin Piscotta, the firebrand German director who demanded truth on stage. His classmates, Marlon Brando, Tony Curtis, Rod Steiger. In 1946, Matthau made his Broadway debut in Anne of the Thousand Days. He wasn't the star, just an understudy covering 7 roles at once. Exhausting, but it taught him discipline. By the 1950s, he was everywhere. Live TV was exploding, and Matthau starred in 158 shows: Studio One, Omnibus, Armstrong Circle Theatre, No Room for Mistakes, no second takes, just pure skill. His big break came with Will's success spoil, Rock Hunter. The play ran 444 performances. Critics loved his wit. Hollywood came calling. He debuted in The Kentuckian with Burt Lancaster. By the mid-50s, Walter Matthau was no longer just a hustler, he was a star. But fame didn't erase old demons. Matthau fell hard into gambling. In just 2 weeks, he lost $183,000 betting on meaningless spring training games. That wasn't just a bad habit, it was financial suicide. He owed loan sharks, lived in fear of beatings, and spent 6 years working just to keep dangerous men off his back. In his lifetime, he estimated he lost $5 million. He once admitted, "I've made $50 million as a movie star, if you'll pardon the expression, and I've given most of it to the bookies." That wasn't a joke. That was his reality. The stress left. Years of nail-biting at racetracks wore a permanent groove into his thumb. Every time someone saw it, they saw addiction carved into his body. November 1966. Matthau was filming The Fortune Cookie with Jack Lemmon. Suddenly, he collapsed massive heart attack. He was only 6. Doctors told him, "Change your life, or you won't live to see another year." For the first time, Matthau listened. He quit smoking, 3 packs a day. He stopped gambling. He started walking, logging 15 miles a week along the Pacific Palisades. Friends said he became like a preacher for health, warning everyone about the dangers he had ignored. It worked. Even after heart bypass surgery in the 70s, he kept acting bad news bears. House calls, grumpy old men. His first heart attack gave him a second life. But quitting cigarettes didn't make him polite. Matthau's mouth was legendary. On the set of Hello, Dolly, in 1968, he clashed viciously with Barbra Streisand. She wanted perfection, endless retakes. Matthau saw arrogance. He called her Miss Poison. He said she had less talent in her entire body than he had in his smallest fart. He even refused to kiss her in their wedding scene. The director had to fake it with camera tricks. The studio backed Streisand. Matthau exploded. "Do I need a heart attack? Do I need an ulcer?" The boss shot back. "The movie's not called Hello, Walter." That was Matthau, fearless, unfiltered, often at war with the very machine that made him famous. The glory years followed. The Odd Couple in 1965 won him a Tony Award. The film adaptation in 1968 made him a household name. The Fortune Cookie earned him an Oscar. And then there was Jack Lemmon. Together, they starred in 10 films across 3 decades. The Odd Couple, The Front Page, Grumpy Old Men. They weren't just co-stars, they were a comedy dynasty. Audiences never got tired of watching them argue, scheme, and outgrump each other. By the 1990s, Matthau was in his 70s, yet Grumpy Old Men pulled in over $70 million at the box office. Proof that Matthau's magic never faded. Off-screen life was equally dramatic. His first marriage to Grace Johnson collapsed under the weight of gambling debts. Then he met Carol Marcus, the woman who changed everything. Carol had been married to writer William Saroyan twice, hung out with Truman Capote, and was rumored to inspire Breakfast at Tiffany's. Matthau called her the liar I fell in love with. Their marriage lasted 40 years, a Hollywood miracle. Their son Charles became his pride and joy. Walter once said their friendship started half an hour after Charles was born. They went everywhere together, and in 1995, Charles even directed his father in The Grasshopper. For a man who grew up abandoned, family became his salvation. Even as health problems stacked up, kidney failure, pneumonia, tumors, Matthau refused to quit acting. His last film, Hanging Up, released in 2000, showed him frail but still powerful. On July 1, 2000, Matthau died of a heart attack at 79. The world lost its grumpiest genius. And that forgotten 1995 interview, the one he stormed out of, reports say the questions turned shallow about Hollywood gossip, not the craft he dedicated his life to. Matthau hated fakery, he hated phonies. So, instead of sitting there and pretending, he did the most Matthau thing possible. He ripped off the mic, stood up, and walked away. That was Walter Matthau. A man who survived poverty, war, addiction, and Hollywood itself, but never backed down when it came to truth, even if it meant the cameras caught him walking out the door. The questions started normally. Then came the moment. Matthau stood up, ripped off his microphone, and left. What happened next explains why this interview stayed hidden for 30 years. Walter Matthau was born on October 1, 1920, in New York City's Lower East Side. His mother, Rose Borolsky, had fled Lithuania to escape poverty and persecution. His father, Milton Matonskayski, came from Kiev and worked odd jobs, sometimes as a peddler, sometimes as an electrician. Their life was hard. The Lower East Side was packed tight with families like theirs. Over 500,000 Eastern European Jews lived in that small corner of New York. The streets were crowded, the buildings were falling apart. There was disease everywhere. People barely survived. Walter would later call it a dreadful, horrible, stinking nightmare. That was his world as a child. When Walter was just 3, his father left. He disappeared without a word. Walter didn't even learn that his father had died until he was 15. A letter came from Bellevue Hospital. That's how he found out. Rose was left alone to raise Walter and his older brother Henry. She worked in a sweatshop, sewing ladies' underwear. The pay was small. The hours were long. Every day she dropped the boys at the Daughters of Israel nursery so she could go to work. She paid $1 a week for that. The stress made Rose strict, even harsh. Walter grew up fast. There was no choice. He learned to be tough to take care of himself. They lived in one cold water tenement after another. These places had no heat, no hot water, often no private toilets. Sometimes they had to share a toilet with the entire floor. They could never keep up with rent. The landlord would throw them out and they'd have to find a new place. Walter remembered hiding in that shared toilet, reading Shakespeare just to get away from the misery. The Great Depression made everything worse. His mother's small wages could never stretch far enough. The constant moving, the cold, the hunger, it all shaped him. He learned to laugh at hardship. He learned to survive. By the time he was 6, Walter was hustling. On the roof of his building, he ran a card game called Bankers Brokers. He sold candy, soda, and ice cream at local Yiddish theaters. The theaters were packed with people who wanted a little escape. Walter sold to them, and he watched the shows. That's where he first saw what show business was like. The card games, the selling, the watching, all of it taught him how to read people, how to spot a chance. At age 11, he got his first acting job. It was a small part in a play called The Dishwasher. He earned 50 cents a show. That was good money for him, but he didn't stop selling during the breaks. He still worked the stands, still sold ice cream and drinks during intermission. After finishing high school, Walter Matthau didn't jump straight into acting. It was the Great Depression. Jobs were hard to find. Matthau took whatever work came his way. He joined the Works Progress Administration, a government program that gave people jobs when America was struggling. One of his first assignments took him far from New York. He became a forestry worker in Montana. There, Matthau planted trees and cleared trails, working hard in the wild outdoors. It was a tough life, but it taught him the value of hard work. Matthau also had a surprising second job. Because he had boxed as a teenager, the WPA hired him to coach boxing for New York City policemen. He stayed fit and met all kinds of people, from rough street cops to young men eager to learn. These early experiences gave him stories and lessons that stayed with him forever. When World War II broke out, Matthau didn't hesitate. In 1942, he joined the U.S. Army Air Forces. He served as a radioman gunner with the 8th Air Force in the 453rd Bombardment Group. His job was dangerous. He kept communication lines open during missions and fired machine guns to defend the bomber. His unit flew B-24 Liberators over Nazi-occupied Europe. And Matthau wasn't the only future star in the skies. James Stewart, the famous actor, was the group's operations officer. Together, they faced the terrors of war, flying missions over Germany and France. Matthau's base was at RAF Old Buckingham in Norfolk, England. There he rose to the rank of Staff Sergeant. He earned 6 battle stars for major campaigns. He survived raids over Berlin. He supported the D-Day invasion. He helped bomb key German targets. These missions were deadly. Many didn't make it back, but Matthau's skill, courage, and a bit of luck saw him through. When the war ended, Matthau returned home. He used his GI Bill benefits to study acting at the New School's dramatic workshop in New York. His teacher was Erwin Piscori, a famous German director known for bold political plays. Mo learned new ways to act, focusing on truth and real emotion. His classmates included future stars like Marlon Brando, Tony Curtis, and Rod Steiger. The school changed Matthau's life. It sharpened his talent and connected him with people who would shape American theater and film. In 1946, Matthau made his professional stage debut. He was 26. His first role was in An of the Thousand Days on Broadway. He wasn't the star, he was the understudy for Percy Wareham, who played Cardinal Wolsey. But it was a start. Matthau soon found himself covering 7 different roles in the same play. It was exhausting but taught him discipline and stagecraft. These early days gave him the foundation for a long and successful career. The 1950s brought a new challenge. Television.ma.tau took it head-on. While many actors struggled to survive between stage jobs, some even sold sporting goods at Macy's. Matthau turned to live TV. He appeared in an incredible 158 shows during that decade. These included Studio One, Armstrong Circle Theatre, Omnibus, Goodyear Theatre, and Robert Montgomery Presents. The work was tough. The shows were live. There was no room for mistakes. But Matthau thrived. The constant work made him one of the most adaptable and reliable actors in New York. By 1955, Matthau's career reached a turning point. He starred in Will's success spoil Rock Hunter on Broadway. The play ran for 444 performances. His wit and charm earned him rave reviews. That same year, he made his film debut in The Cookian, playing a villain opposite Burt Lancaster. The movie grossed $2.6 million, a solid success. These achievements pushed Matthau into the spotlight as a leading man in both theatre and film. Still, Matthau kept working in TV until 1965. That year, everything changed. He starred in The Odd Couple on Broadway and won a Tony Award. He also appeared in The Fortune Cookie with Jack Lemmon. His role as scheming lawyer Whiplash Willie won him an Oscar. From then on, Matthau didn't need to take TV jobs to pay the bills. He had finally made it. Walter Matthau's gambling addiction took a shocking turn early in his career. In just 2 weeks, he lost $183,000, and it wasn't even during the regular baseball season. He blew that money on spring training games, the kind nobody takes seriously because they're so unpredictable. For a young actor still trying to make his name in Hollywood, this wasn't just a loss. It was a disaster. That much money gone so fast, over $13,000 a day, was proof of how recklessly he gambled at the time. It crushed him financially. But the damage didn't stop there. The emotional toll was brutal. That moment marked him for life. It set off a string of struggles that would follow him for years. His story shows how even the most charming and successful stars can be brought to their knees by addiction when the stakes are this high. To cover his losses, Matthau turned to underworld loan sharks. It was a move that filled his life with fear. These weren't the kind of people you wanted to owe. The interest rates were insane. The threats were real. For 6 long years, he scraped by just to make his payments and stay safe. Every time he got paid, that money didn't go toward a better life. It went straight to keeping dangerous men off his back. Even as his fame grew, he lived in constant anxiety, trying to stay one step ahead of the people who could ruin him. The scars from that time ran deep. It changed how he saw money, risk, and even himself. Over the course of his career, Matthau estimated he lost around $5 million to gambling. He once said, "I've made $50 million as a movie star, if you'll pardon the expression, and I've given most of it to the bookies." That line wasn't a joke. It was the bitter truth. Despite earning a fortune, most of it slipped through his fingers at betting tables and racetracks, and it didn't bring him happiness. Matthau admitted gambling was pure misery. It wasn't fun. It wasn't thrilling. It was just a desperate attempt to fix something inside himself that never felt right. His words are a hard warning about how addiction can destroy no matter how much money you make. The stress of his gambling showed in ways few people would expect. Matthau developed a permanent groove in his thumb. Years of biting his nails while watching games and races wore it down. That groove was more than a habit. It was proof of the tension he lived with day in and day out. Friends and reporters noticed it. They saw what gambling had done to him. Not just to his bank account or his mood, but to his body itself. That mark on his thumb was a silent story of decades filled with worry and regret. In 1966, Walter Matthau was in the middle of filming The Fortune Cookie with Jack Lemmon and Billy Wilder when disaster struck. On November 27th, he collapsed on set from a massive heart attack. He was only 46, but years of smoking up to 3 packs a day, gambling all night, and avoiding exercise had taken their toll. The crew was stunned. Production stopped for months while Matthau fought for his life. Doctors warned him that without drastic changes, he wouldn't see another year. That scare forced him to take a hard look at what he'd been doing to himself. Many would have retired. Not Matthau. He jumped back into work within months. He starred in The Bad News Bears and kept going strong into his 70s. When people asked if he'd retire, he'd laugh it off. "Retirement is alien to my vocabulary," he said. Even after more heart trouble in the 1980s, he kept acting. Some of his best work came during those years, like The Odd Couple Tonini, Nanakoidi in 1998. He often spoke about how that first heart attack gave him a second life. He said it made him think about what really mattered. He valued time with his family, especially his son Charlie. He picked roles that meant something to him instead of chasing fame, and he became a loud voice for heart health, warning others to avoid his mistakes. Yet, for all his growth, Matthau's fire hadn't cooled. In 1968, during the making of Hello Dolly, he clashed brutally with Barbara Streisand. She was 26, he was 48. The two couldn't have been more different. Streisand was young, driven, and wanted retakes to get everything just right. Matthau saw it as arrogance. He snapped and called her Miss Towen, suggesting she was poison. He wouldn't even be in the same room with her unless the script demanded it. Their battles were so fierce that they nearly derailed the production. Even though the film had a then huge $20 million budget riding on it, the insults didn't stop there. Matthau once told her, "I have more talent in my smallest fart than she does in her entire body." It was one of the harshest put-downs ever heard on a Hollywood set. He even compared her to a boa constrictor and said she was a freak attraction who became famous before she learned to act. The feud got so bad that when it came time for their wedding scene, Matthau refused to kiss her. The director had to fake the kiss with clever camera work, leaving eagle-eyed viewers to spot the gap between their faces. Matthau's anger boiled over to the studio boss, Richard Zahn. "Do I need a heart attack? Do I need an ulcer?" he begged. But Xanax shot back. "The film is not called Hello Walter." That said it all. Streisand was the star. The studio backed her, not him. And the tension on set became as legendary as the film itself, which ended up a box office flop despite its massive budget. Walter Matthau's Oscar win for The Fortune Cookie in 1966 changed everything for him. Before that, he was respected, but not a major star. In Billy Wilder's sharp comedy, Matthau played Whiplash Willie Gingrich, a sly lawyer with quick wit and scruffy charm. The film came out in October 1966 and marked the first time he worked with Jack Lemmon. That pairing turned into one of Hollywood's greatest duos, lasting 10 films and more than 30 years. His performance was so strong that despite suffering a heart attack during filming that caused months of delays, he still walked away with the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor at the 39th Academy Awards in April 1967. He beat big names like James Mason and George Segal. That win lifted him from character actor to leading man overnight, and Whiplash Willie became one of comedy's most unforgettable roles. Just a year earlier, in March 1965, Matthau made his mark on Broadway. He played Oscar Madison in The Odd Couple at the Plymouth Theatre. His messy, sharp-tongued sports writer lit up the stage, and his chemistry with Art Carney, who played the fussy Felix Unger, was electric. The play ran for an incredible 964 performances. Matthau's take on Oscar won him the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play. It was his second Tony, the first coming from A Shot in the Dark in 1962. What made it even more surprising was that at age 44, Matthau had never been the headliner of a Broadway show before, but the role fit him so perfectly that it turned him into a major star. The success led to the 1968 film version, a TV series, and endless revival. Matthau's Oscar Madison became a legend, and so did Matthau himself. What's funny is that Matthau originally wanted to play Felix Angar, not Oscar. He told Neil Simon that Oscar felt too easy because it was too much like his real self. Matthau wanted the challenge of playing neat, nervous Felix, but Simon told him flat out to play Oscar or go find another play. Even after the show became a hit, Matthau kept saying in interviews that he could have done Felix just as well. He even suggested switching roles with Art Carney after a year. But director Mike Nichols shot that idea down. Neil Simon later said it was hard to even imagine Matthau as anyone but Oscar. Looking back, it's amazing how close we came to a very different odd couple. Neil Simon thought the world of Matthau. He called him the greatest instinctive actor I've ever seen. Simon said Matthau's style, his slouch, his tired look, his dry humor inspired the character of Oscar Madison. Standing 63 with a droopy face, Matt could turn a simple line into comedy gold just with timing. Simon felt Matthau's personality brought the play to life. Even George Burns said Matthau didn't need funny lines because he was fearless. Matthau's mix of charm and sharp delivery helped make Oscar Madison one of the great characters in American comedy. Matthau's big screen success didn't stop with the fortune cookie. In 1971, he starred in Koch, directed by Jack Lemmon. Matthau played an elderly widower who befriends a pregnant teen, earning an Oscar nomination for Best Actor at the 44th Academy Awards. It showed he could do more than play the grumpy guy. Then, in 1975, he teamed up with George Burns for The Sunshine Boys, playing one half of a feuding comedy team. That role earned him another Best Actor nomination at the 48th Academy Awards. He lost both times, first to Gene Hackman for The French Connection, and then to Jack Nicholson for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But those nominations confirmed what everyone already knew. Matthau was one of the best, a master at making audiences laugh and feel at the same time. Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon lit up the screen together like few duos ever have. Between 1966 and 1998, they starred in 10 films side by side. That's a rare achievement in Hollywood. Their most famous hit, The Odd Couple, in 1968, became such a sensation, it inspired a TV show, and 30 years later, a sequel. They didn't stop there. The Front Page in 1974, Grumpy Old Men in 1993, and Out to Sea in 1997 were just a few more of their shared successes. Critics and fans alike called them one of the most successful pairs in Hollywood history. Even as they got older, audiences loved them. Grumpy Old Men brought in over $70 million in the US, a massive haul for a comedy with stars in their 70s. Lemmon didn't just act with Matthau, he even directed him in Koch in 1971. Their bond was real, on and off-screen. Off-screen, Matthau's life was just as full of drama and love. He married Grace Johnson in 1948. They had 2 kids, David and Jenny. But the marriage ended in 1958. During that time, Matthau struggled with a gambling problem that left him deep in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars. His luck changed when he starred in the Broadway hit Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter in 1955. That's where he met Carol Marcus Soyan. Carol was no stranger to headline-making romances. She had married and divorced the famous writer William Soyan, not once, but twice. Matthau and Carol tied the knot in 1959 and had a son, Charles. Their marriage lasted over 40 years, something almost unheard of in Hollywood circles. Carol's memoir, Among the Porcupines, shared their story with warmth and sharp humor. Carol's life before Matthau was filled with colorful chapters. She married William Soyan for the first time in 1943. That lasted 6 years. They tried again in 1951, but it only lasted 6 months. She later said she couldn't believe how bad it was the first time, so she had to see it again for herself. Carol moved in famous circles. Truman Capote, for example, based Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's on her. Matthau had a sharp joke about his wife's flair for embellishment. He said he found a liar. She's crazy about. Carol herself captured their playful love best. I love you because you know I'm lying, and you let it go. Matthau's bond with his son Charles was something special too. Charles was born in 1962 and grew up around film sets. Walter called him his best friend, saying it started just half an hour after Charles was born. They went everywhere together: games, concerts, film shoots. Charles became a director and gave his dad a leading role in The Grass Harp in 1995, based on a Truman Capote story. That film showed their creative connection at its best.